Hello, everybody. My name is Nic Sanker, founder of VICI, and super excited to have some special guests on today to talk about the development of high school student athletes. I'm going to give you guys a quick second to introduce yourselves, and then we can jump right into it.
You
go first.
All right. I'm Kenny Szabo. I have the title of Director of Sport Performance at ADAPT in Charlottesville. ADAPT stands for Athletic Development Performance Training, and we try to bring athletic style training to the youth of the area from ages 7 all the way up to high school, college, professional, and then we have an adult training program as well.
I'm Martin Katz, and I'm an MD. I'm double board certified in family and sports medicine, but I pride myself on really trying to charge people with the intention to health. I'm the director of sports at Miller School Endurance and medical director of the mountain biking endurance program. Again, really excited to be a part here, really trying to move the needle on helping people understand the importance of athletic training, health, and recovery.
Yeah, so I think we can just jump into kind of really understanding how you guys got into like sports and performance. And so really the first question I wanted to ask is, can you tell us about your journey into sports, health, psychology, whatever it is, and what drives your passion in this field? Kenny, you can just kick us off.
Sure. I mean, I got started in the field of strength conditioning in college, interning in the weight room, and then I went off to graduate school and served as a graduate assistant where I got to work with a variety of Division I sports in the weight room. And then moved to Charlottesville where I was briefly working as a role in strength conditioning at UVA. And though I loved the college setting and getting to work with the athletes and all the toys and options that we have at our disposal, we got to see a lot of athletes that would come in, and we needed to essentially develop them for a year or two in the weight room before we could put them on a more advanced or a program that suited their athletic ability on the field. Their weight room ability, if you will, wasn't on the same level. So we'd see guys that come in, and it wasn't all cases, but in some cases we would have to break some bad habits they might have formed, or they never learned to power clean the correct way or whatever it is. And, you know, it'd take a year or two to get them to where we would want them to be at the college level, if you will, for weightlifting. And I always wanted to kind of get on the front end of that. And when I was coming out of grad school, it wasn't as popular or common as it is today, and even social media wasn't. It wasn't that long ago, but I didn't really understand that working in a setting like this might be possible. So when I found out that, you know, these places are here and there was one in the town that I was living, it was kind of a no-brainer for me to do that and join ADAPT so I can kind of get on the front end. And, you know, I'm still lucky enough to work with college athletes in the summer, and that's a blast, but we work with primarily now middle school, high school level, trying to prepare them for that level. And if they don't want to play in college, or they don't play in college, that's fantastic. Our hope is that they know how to walk into a weight room and they're comfortable and confident in leading themselves through a training session after sports, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm a little older than these two guys. So I go all the way back to high school. I'm from South Africa. I ran for my state. I actually ran against Zola Budd. If you remember her, she was the barefoot runner who tripped Mary Decker-Slaney. But I was a super skinny kid at that point, but I could run. But I wasn't really well balanced in my nutrition approach. Totally didn't understand at that point why I would have great running days and then I would completely bonk other days. And as I've progressed through, in college I played tennis. That was more a mindset, more so than a recovery, but absolutely plays into this idea of fatigue and where fatigue comes from, and how you can maybe monitor and help kids understand your adaptability to sport, your adaptability to strength training, your mind adaptation to the stresses of just being in college in this day and age, social media, pre-training, during intense testing, all these things can play a role in how you're performing out there. And obviously, we want these kids to understand they're student athletes, and athletes certainly come second, so there's a big student component. But this athletic component can obviously get them far, and got me, in places. Then I progressed through medical school, and in my training, I've seen kids do really, really well. And unfortunately, in the sports medicine, we see kids who really get to a point where they're doing well, and then they reach that overtraining and get into the overreaching and then overtraining. Sorry. And that can really hurt them, and they never really get to their potential, and it can be quite frustrating for them and the coaches and the families. And so just helping them understand there's a bigger game to play here, and we're trying to introduce that to a bigger population. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, and I think for me, I've always loved sports. My dad played football in college, played at Colgate, and my whole family just loves sports, loves to compete. And I always kind of thought I knew I wanted to play college football. I didn't know exactly how that would look, or how that would work. But I happened to have some decent success in high school, but I was still really underdeveloped. I had a lot of raw athleticism, and I think when I first really started to kind of develop it as an athlete and to really appreciate everything that goes into the development of it as an athlete is when I started working with Kenny, actually. After my senior season, right really during COVID, Jonas and I worked with Kenny for several months, where he helped me transform my body. I put on like 20, 25 pounds of muscle, and he helped really kind of take a really intentional approach to my development. But I think also it kind of really showed because this was a time when it was really, for me, low stress. COVID was actually kind of a lower stress time in my life. The importance of the mental side and the recovery that goes behind that. My body was able to recover, and I was able to make definitely the biggest gains I've ever made in my life. So just seeing how that can impact athletes and the jumps that they can make and the jump that I was able to make during that time was really kind of what started to trigger this. I didn't have it earlier in high school, and I really wish I did, which is why I started VICI, to be able to help more athletes get access to training, whether it be developing their bodies, their minds, their skills at an earlier age, and getting more people opportunities. But I think what I want to jump into next is kind of what are some of the biggest misconceptions surrounding the development of high school athletes. And I think one that we can jump into to kick it off that a lot of people don't realize is just how different training looks at different ages and different stages of one's career. So I think you can kind of kick that off and just like give us a little overview, and how does it look different when you are in middle school, high school, college, or is it age? Is it other factors that really impact this?
I mean, there's a whole lot of factors that impact it. If we're talking just about age, I like to explain it like it's somewhat common knowledge, I think, for people that when young kids are like the ages of like 2 to 4, we're not training them yet, but there's a window of accelerated learning for language, and they can pick up languages a little bit easier. That's when they learn to talk, and if you want to introduce a second language, that's a great time. And I see it firsthand with a niece of mine who can speak Spanish and English, and I'm doing my Duolingo, so she can't talk behind my back. But just like there's a window of accelerated learning there for language, there's physical capabilities that can be learned in certain windows as well. And we have them split up into age groups, and we follow this long-term development model, which isn't perfect, and we make some changes, and there's been updates to it, and there's other models out there as well. But, it'll say things from like the ages of 7 to 10. We're focusing on the ABCs of development, which is agility, balance, coordination, speed, the ABCs, the plural. And we're trying to mask drills with games and make things fun, and we want the kids to come back. We don't want it to be boring, because my biggest fear is 7, 10, 12-year-old gets bored by just the monotony of training, and then they don't want to train when they're older. So trying to make it as fun as we can, and at that age it should be. And then like 10 to 12, there's a window for motor learning. So, kind of right before the growth spurt and their body goes through a lot of changes, the body can pick up motor skills really well. And not to go off on a tangent, but some kids who might be late bloomers, they stay in that window longer. So there's some evidence out there to show that late bloomers end up being a little bit more skillful later in life because they had that window of accelerated learning longer. So anybody out there late blooming and growing, move your body in a bunch of different ways and take advantage of that window. And then, once they get into through that developmental window of puberty and their growth spurt, it's a great time to build an aerobic base. Then towards the end of the growth spurt, you want to hit speed and strength really hard. And then once they get past that point, 15 plus, you can really start to hone in on the specific demands of the sport and their individual needs, obviously if they've built that foundation of training. And then I like to explain it as, if the goal for you is to play in college, then, you didn't go right to med school. You had to go to high school, and then you had to go to college. You had to take geography at one point. That's these developmental stages. Like we gotta fill those gaps, build a great foundation, and then you start to narrow it in as you get a little bit older. And there are windows to hit those capabilities, so you have a better job of having the adaptation towards them later in life.
Yeah, I don't know if you have anything else. He kind of...
he hit everything, but again, through all these stages, there's one, keeping it fun, not making it too intense, cross-training so you're not getting, too intense on one sport too early.
Yes.
So this is that a concern of then getting into injury specifically or illness. And then, then it's no more fun. The kid's getting wrecked. The parents may or may not be believing them, the coaches, and you're pushing the kid, and then it's not fun, and now they're not even in the sport anymore, not enjoying it. So, I think all these things are really important to think about. Social media, how's that impacting the kid? What are they thinking about there? Who's, are they, using it? Hopefully very limited, and what impact is it having on them? How's their nutrition? How's their sleep through all these stages? And obviously, in every stage, there's more sleep as you're younger, and as you get older, less sleep is required, but still an adequate amount. So if the kid's on social media all night and then waking up early for a 6 o'clock session or 7 o'clock session, two a day if they're really going intense, and not getting enough sleep, that's a kid that we have to watch more closely, and possibly are they getting to that overreaching, overtraining stage through any of these. So we want to keep it fun, enjoyable, and get them to their potential, because again, that goal is performance.
Yeah. And how much does sleep impact your performance? Like how much of an impact does it have, and how much sleep should athletes be aiming for? Yeah,
sleep impacts so many things. It impacts their mood, how they're feeling anxious about their performance, what their mood is. It's going to impact their ability to adapt and recover. So, the most important thing about a workout is how you recover for your next workout. And if you're not sleeping, that next workout is going to suffer tremendously. And so, a kid, if we're looking at high school athletes who are we'll say mostly grown 15, 16, 17, they're needing at least 8 hours, no less, preferably 9. And if they're in the more elite categories, they may need even more. So just because you're elite doesn't mean you don't need the sleep. Actually, you may need more. If you're talking about a middle school athlete, you're now talking about more like 10, 11 hours. So the sleep requirement does go up for sure. And that's a growth thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, very important.
Another really common question that a lot of athletes have is just like whether or not they should play multiple sports. What is y'all's take on playing multiple sports, and does it help? Does it hurt? Should they focus on one sport? What do you guys think?
I'm a proponent of playing multiple sports. There's some people who I follow and respect who, really dive into this research, and it's their field specifically, and they'll recommend, hey, wait until your sophomore, junior year to specialize if that's what you want to do, is a kind of a very general recommendation. You can obviously specialize all throughout. I think it takes it's a little bit more demanding mentally, because it's similar things, similar movements. It's demanding physically as well, because the movements and the repetition become very similar, and you're working similar muscle groups and movement patterns over and over and over again. And when you play multiple sports, you can work different movement patterns, and you're moving in ways that work muscles maybe opposite or differently than what you were working before. And it can help with things like overuse and overreaching, overtraining, all those things that we were talking about earlier, and kind of just balance you out a little bit. But I think there's a lot of benefits outside of the physical. The world of basketball is a lot different than the world of lacrosse. The people you're going to play with, the teammates, the parents, the setting is different. You're outside. The traveling will be different. It's just an entirely different experience, let alone the physical part. And I think that alone, making new friends, meeting new people, making connections. It's all about who you know, that thing. I think there's a lot of benefits to playing multiple sports outside of just the physical. But then again, you may find that you love another sport more than the sport you thought you loved. And maybe you thought you wanted to play basketball along, and then you try soccer finally, and you absolutely love it. And then maybe you want to pursue that. We actually have an athlete here who she played one sport her entire life, and then 2 years ago she completely changed sports, stopped playing that sport because her goal was to play that sport forever. She practices every day, multiple hours, skill training when she didn't have practice, and then finally she switched sports. She's playing a different sport. She's only been playing it a couple years, and she just committed to a Division I university to play that sport. So things like that can happen. I think just try different things, and then personally, not to make this about me, but I didn't play a lot of sports growing up, and I don't regret a whole lot of things about life, but I wish I went back and just played more sports, especially doing what I'm doing now. Then I just have a little more knowledge about the specifics and how the game is played. Not that we're going over X's and O's in here, but just having an understanding of what that stress of this practice and that situation might be would have been more valuable for me later. So I wish I'd played more sports.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm a big fan of multi-training. I think it's great for the neuromuscular facilitation of the body. Working in one plane all the time is not good. So, changing the planes you work in, the muscles you use, the facilitation you get from that, I think is incredibly important. I think building those different communities can be really helpful. Introduction to those sports can be incredible. Different coaches, different mentalities. So I'm a pretty big fan of spreading across. I don't mind if you have a specific interest and you do a little travel because that's the sport that you're more interested in, but dip your foot in some others. I think it can be incredibly helpful for the physical aspect of things and the mental aspect of things, giving yourself a break.
And just to elaborate even more, you can get very specific with it. So if you look at an annual plan of training, say my focus is football in the fall. Well, in the winter, playing a sport like basketball where you're going to be getting a little bit more mileage in at each practice than maybe you would a football practice is good. You can get a little bit more, build an aerobic base in the winter and run longer distances, and then, track or something along the lines in the spring to just focus on your speed training. Even if your focus is football, you can use these other sports and build them into your training. And we have a lot of athletes that do that here. We know their priority is this sport, but they're playing 2-3 other sports throughout the year to just work on different qualities. So, if you need to work on speed and you play a fall sport, run track in the spring. And just if you need to work on your running, there's cross country, and you can use these instead of just going to run around your neighborhood in the off season. Go do it with a bunch of kids at your school, around the school, in a designated time and place, and you have the accountability to show up at that time. You have coaches to coach you and a program written for you. Use cross country instead of going on long jogs if it fits your off season plan.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, wrestling is another great sport.
Yeah, they can all be beneficial for sure. I didn't mean to leave any out.
Incredibly, yeah. I mean, all of them I think can be very, very beneficial to help you figure out where you're on space. For a kid who's a little lanky and doesn't really know where he is in space, wrestling he might get beat up pretty good.
Definitely. If you're an offensive lineman in football and you have trouble in the trenches, wrestle. Yeah. Learn how those body positions can help, and pushing and moving against another body is what you're doing in the fall. Mm-hmm. And then the other side of that, if you're an offensive lineman and you have no problem throwing people around, but your footwork isn't too good, go play basketball and get in the post and learn some footwork.
Perfect. Yeah, we had an offensive tackle at Princeton who just moved really well because of his footwork in basketball. He was 6'8", 330, and had great feet because he had played basketball his whole life. His whole family played basketball, but had phenomenal feet, and a lot of that was due to him playing basketball and having to have great feet as a post-up kind of guy, and just being able to move around in the post. So, I can definitely see that. And for me, I played football and basketball all the way through, and I think that, like you said, you work on different qualities. Like during basketball season, I could definitely tell I was more explosive and more agile than I was. Like I felt like I was a better athlete because I was able to move so well, having to especially lateral movement, moving side to side to stay in front of people, or jumping, those kind of things. I just felt explosive, and I was like, oh dang, I wish I could move like this during the season, but
Sure.
it's just football also just wears on you.
Yeah, and then to take that even another way, if you want to think really long term, like to where I'm at now, football is a great game. It's the sport I played predominantly throughout childhood and through high school and into college, and that's not a game that you can get a couple friends together and go play when you're done playing. Like when you're done playing football, you're done playing football. Flag is flag. It's not the same. It's a different game. They have a football, but it's a different game. So if you want to prepare yourself after high school, college, however far you want to go with your game, to be able to go and continue to be active, play those sports in high school when it's free to sign up. Well, maybe some schools you have to pay a little bit, but it's you have an opportunity to go play, learn from coaches. You have scheduled practices, and you can build that knowledge. Because now if I want to go play, soccer is an example of a game that you can go play when you're done playing. You can get a few friends, and there's goals around in public parks. I didn't play soccer in high school, so if I get invited to the pickup game, I'm probably backing out because I didn't play, and I don't want to go embarrass myself or whatever. Yeah, 2 left feet. But if I'd have played a little bit in high school, I'd be all over that. It'd be great. Instead of going on a run, let me go play some pickup soccer at the field. If you want to think very long term, building a base of just skill that you can use later in life to stay active. But if you only play a sport that you have to have a bunch of equipment and 21 other people and referees, then you're not going to be as active if that's the only thing you stuck to. Or you're going to have to get really creative and learn new things later. And as you get older, it gets harder.
Yeah, and I think
but never too late.
Yeah, it is. Especially getting into some golf.
Yeah.
I gotta work on my golf skills. That'd be another one that you definitely gotta learn.
Yes.
For just like the long term. But I think a lot of athletes who play multiple sports think that you don't have to train like strength training or especially getting into the weight room during the off season. Why is it so important that athletes who are playing basketball, who are playing soccer or lacrosse during their off season continue to work in the weight room and to continue to build up their bodies? Does it not make them sore or slow? Why is it important that they continue to train?
For me, it's reduction of injuries. And I think, that's why strength conditioning was started in the 60s, 70s, something like that. And their hope was to, get a little bigger, faster, stronger, but they wanted to reduce the likelihood of injuries. And, at the time and early on in strength conditioning is still not that old of a field, really. The things to go off of was bodybuilding and powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting. And that carried on for a really long time. The weight room pretty much looked like one or all three of those things, and now we're getting to a point where it's looking much more of its own field of training the athlete. There's a little bit of Olympic lifting, and depending on the coach and their style, and of course there's a lot of the main three movements or main two. There's a lot of squat and there's pressing movements, and kids need to gain weight in certain circumstances, so a bodybuilding style of training is great, but we're really trying to train proper movement quality. We're trying to get you in the correct patterns. We're trying to remove or eliminate asymmetries as much as we can, get you moving as sufficiently as you can, get you comfortable and confident with your body. And then we're adding load and intensity and trying to make it replicate the demands of your sport. But it's not just lifting heavy weights all the time, and it's not just power cleaning, it's not just bodybuilding and going to failure all of the time. I think that is the conception that people may have, or that's what they perceive and that's what they see, but that has changed a lot recently, and it's continuing to change. And I think now versus even 10 years ago, you can tell the difference walking into, are these athletes working out, or are they bodybuilders, or are they powerlifters? And I think those who don't dedicate their time maybe in the weight room today, they might think, I don't need to go do bodybuilding things or powerlifting things. But that's not what we're doing. There might be some of those components. The whole goal is to prepare your body for the demands of your sport. When you put that foot in the ground, there's a whole lot of weight and force going into it. We want to improve the tissue tolerance as much as we can in the weight room so that you can safely execute on the field.
Yeah, that's pretty corporative. But I would say, if we work backwards, so we start at performance, and that's what coaches want, and that's generally what athletes want. I mean, there's going to be some kids who are playing that really aren't that serious about the sports, but for the kids who are really serious about the sports, pre-training and actually pre-season training are incredibly important to again reach that performance goal. So for performance, you need to overreach. We don't want to get it to where you're overreaching past a certain point, but you want to reach so you get that body to adapt. And that, if you're showing up to practice with a limited ability to get to that point, or limited ability to have a base to support that, you're going to be overreaching and not functional overreaching, but getting to the point where you're getting to overtraining and hurting yourself much more quickly. And so again, it's a lot about having this adaptive process. So in training, you want to be able to train hard and then have your body recover, and with that there will be adaptive processes so you can get to that performance. And if you're heading into the preseason when all coaches are, hey, we got a game in 2 weeks, we're going to hit this really hard, you're going to increase your risk of injury and illness, and I don't think it's going to be as good of a season as it could be as with regard to performance. So I think heading in with a base is very important.
And another thing that athletes might be turned off by the weight room is because they don't want it to affect their performance negatively on the field, getting too sore, for example, and something like that. And I get that. If you have a good coach and a good plan, that shouldn't be a factor. If you start training for the first time, you're going to be sore the first couple weeks. After you get over that, the training should be catered towards your sport schedule. So my goal is never to have somebody be so sore the next day at practice they can't perform, or let alone a game, obviously. Our job is to manage their fatigue. What's their training week look like? How do you feel today? And we make changes daily in here when kids come in. They have a plan and they come in, we talk to them, how you feeling? And if they're not feeling too great, we make adjustments. And we have tests that we do and maybe they think they feel great, but they do a test then when they come in every day, and then or a sprint test or a jump test, and it's much lower than it usually is. Then we ask them, are you feeling all right? Well, I had this going on, and say, okay, we'll take things down a little bit today, and we want them to feel great when they're on the field or the court or wherever they need to feel great. We want them to feel great. So somebody who maybe doesn't have experience in the strength conditioning side yet may think that they'll be too sore the next day, and that's not the goal. And there's times of the year we want you to be sore, but it's when practice isn't a priority or games are not on the schedule. So there's times that we will go after you because we need to create the adaptations he's discussing, but there's other times where our job is to just manage fatigue and get in what we can and do the exercises that we need to do to keep you as healthy as we can. Because if we make you the biggest, fastest, strongest, whatever your goals are, person in the area, but you get hurt in the first week, then it doesn't matter.
And on the flip side of that, we do have kids who maybe mentally are fatigued, but physically they can do the sport. You can also look at that and say, hey, well, the parameters we're looking at, we can actually push you a little bit today. Let's drink a little bit, let's talk a little bit, let's make this fun, let's listen to some music, let's get it on. And so you can use it on the flip side, because sometimes that happens as well. But we definitely don't want to miss the overtraining kids, because that's when we really get into trouble.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So both sides can be helpful.
Yeah, and you talked about how essentially the weight room has evolved from bodybuilding and just powerlifting to training athletes. How has the other 22 hours of the day evolved over the recent years, and how is that change affecting the way that athletes are recovering?
It's a great question.
Yeah, he's done before. He's doing good.
Yeah, that's an evolving study. So, part of the reason I'm so excited about this is because hopefully we can continue to study this and get markers that we can continue to use and validate. So, heart rate recovery, some athletes do really well with, some don't. Heart rate variability may be more important or maybe more useful, but then you need something that you're using. Blood testing can be very useful, but then you're having to get lab tests on these kids. And then there's all these questionnaires that you can ask kids that give you an idea. Are they sleeping? Are they recovering? What's their mental status looking like? So these are variables that are coming up, understandably very important again, looking at hydration, looking at sleep. So when a kid gets off the football field, you weigh them, are they down a pound? Well, then you know they need 16 ounces of water, especially in the southern states, or more. So you want to replace their water because it's unlikely that they've lost a lot of body mass outside of water. So you want to replace that. So there's so many things that we're starting to understand that are so important to helping this kid, again, to tomorrow, so that they're able to adapt overnight through the evening eating, getting the nutrients that they need. How much protein do they need? And this, as we've talked about before, this can vary from a defensive, somebody on the defense, offensive, to a wide receiver, somebody's doing a lot more running, a midfielder versus a defender versus a goalie. Somebody's taking hits. Mm-hmm. How hard is that on their body? How high is their heart rate going through that training? How much mileage do they do? So we can then start looking, boy, they need more muscle, more protein maybe, or more aerobic, more carbs to recuperate. And those are things that we can look at and give these kids a lot more data points on. So that other 22 we realize is, once you get to that elite level, Nick, in that there's specimens all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, so but what they do in the other 22 hours is really what's going to make or break that specimen. Mm-hmm. And that's just so important now. We realize that.
Yeah. I think.
I was just going to elaborate briefly. I tell parents, kids all the time, there's 168 hours in the week. I might see your kid for 2 or 3 of them. There's a lot of other hours in the week that, and a lot of other things that should be considered at the very least, and implemented as best you can, and however you best see fit, one thing at a time, slowly. But there's a whole lot of other hours in the week. If you want to make these 2 or 3 hours stick, there's a little bit that they have to do on the home front.
Yeah, that's funny. I tell my patients that if I walk into your room caring more about your health than that I care more about your health than you do, we've got a problem already. Because again, I spend maybe 3 hours, 5 hours a year with people in the practice. Mm-hmm. And so really interesting people in their own health. What am I doing? How is the sleep impacting me? How is, social media impacting me? How much water do I actually need? Are you a sweater? Are you not a sweater? I mean, some athletes lose liters in a workout, some don't. How much protein do I need to really recover and ensure that that I'm building and not getting injured? So interesting kids in this is paramount, and certainly, depending on the age of the kid, interesting the parent to help support the kid. It's tremendous.
And I think to wrap it up, I kind of wanted to really see, if I had to ask, talking to parents, what would you say are 3 of the first kind of habits that you think are really important? I'm a big proponent on success being a certain lifestyle, and to live a lifestyle, you have to put certain habits into your life that will help you get where you want to go. What would you say are 3 little things that athletes can start to implement into their lives, whether it be during the 2 hours that they put into training, whether like taking care of the little joints, or like I know with you, something that we did was starting to do ankle exercises. I had ankle issues all throughout high school and never really trained the ankles that much, but we were consistently hitting ankle exercises. That's just one example, but stuff inside the weight room, but also the other 22 hours a day. What would you say personally are 3 things that are often overlooked and would be great habits to start for athletes out there?
Foot and ankle training, first and foremost. PSA. Ankle injury is the most common injury in sports. I don't have a data point on this, but just from my experience, they also seem to be the most least trained part of the body in the weight room. If we can level those things out, I think we can reduce the likelihood of injury. The feet are the only thing between you and your body. The quarter of the bones in your entire body are in your feet. You got over 30 joints in your foot. There's a whole lot of tissue there. They hit the ground before anything else. The more of that force your foot and an ankle can absorb, because they're strong and durable, the less your knees have to do, the less your hips have to do, the less your low back is feeling it. Build those feet. You'll get faster and jump higher too. What was the question?
Two more. So
3 habits.
Three habits. Oh, sorry. So that was just my tangent. I'd say
Yeah,
3 habits.
I mean-
you have to know where you're trying to get to. You have to have I don't want to simplify it as to goals, but like, where do you want to be? So if you know you want to play in college, know you want to play in college. If you're not sure, that's fine, but get an idea of where you are trying to get to. And with that comes setting specific goals and SMART goals, smarter goals, whatever they're teaching now, however long the acronym is. But it's got to be measurable. It's got to be realistic. You got to put a date on it. Set those goals. I guess we can lump that into 1. I'd say 2 is getting a routine that you can do those things that you're trying to accomplish consistently. So if I want to do X, Y, and Z, but it's always a hassle to do one of those things, then the routine needs adjusted. You have to be able to conveniently accomplish the things that you're trying to do, or at least it will help you stay disciplined. Being disciplined is one thing, but if you can set yourself up with consistency and an efficient schedule, it's going to make discipline that much easier to accomplish. And then I guess the third thing is when you're trying to pick these things, something I try to abide by, and we were talking about it very recently, is when you have to make tough decisions, just it's regret minimization. So if I got a choice between this workout or going to a concert or something, in a year, which one would I regret doing more? And maybe it's missing the concert. Go to the concert. Depending on there's a lot of variables there. But maybe you'll make good choices, but maybe you'll regret not doing this training because you're right on the bubble of getting picked for this team or whatever it's going to be. But may not be the best example of minimizing regret, but when you're trying to make those tough decisions, I like to think a year, 5 years, 10 years from now, which one of these decisions will I regret more? And I feel like that's an easy way to handle it, in my opinion.
That's pretty awesome, actually. Just going back off that tangent, and it could be a goal, is functional movement. I can't say enough about that. So, have somebody smart like Kenny evaluate what's the movement looking like. Is it functional? Because if you got a catch in the hip or catch in the knee or certainly the ankle, and you don't have that dorsiflexion or plantar flexion or range of motion, that can have a massive impact on what's happening. So that functional movement piece is pretty important. I'm not sure that's a habit, but if you need to train it, that's
just
certainly
a practice
something
to keep in mind.
Yeah, just certainly a practice to keep in mind. Again, I mean, I hate to be silly on it, but I'm just a huge fan of exercise. Again, functional, intelligent, efficient exercise that's being progressive and monitored. I'm a huge fan of nutrition, and then I'm with nutrition. I'd certainly lump in hydration because a lot of us forget about that piece and just how important it is. We are 50 to 60% water, and the body just doesn't work well or efficiently without water. And then the third is going to be sleep. Again, that the other thing that comes with sleep is the mental aspect. And I know you said 3, but I got to say, how's your mental stress? How you're coping with things? How you getting along with friends? Are you making good friend choices, relationship choices? Do you have somebody you can sit down and really trust? And hopefully you're again making good choices, being respectful, listening to your parents, and sort of paving an easy road. As I talk to my kids sometimes, and sometimes I give them an example, but if you're heading down the road and you want that, and you have that goal in mind, you want all the tires moving in the same direction, you want that engine working really well, and if one of the tires or one of the axles isn't working, or if the brakes applied, things aren't going to work as well, and that car's not going to move in the right direction. And that's the way to think about this. If you want to head down that road that way, make sure all the parts are working well and seamlessly, so you get to that goal seamlessly, on time, efficiently, not hitting the brakes all the way down the road. Nobody likes that. In my car, when I show my kids, they're not helping in the house, and this is now what the house feels like. They're being disruptive. It's not great. So
that would be a great way that I could have explained why it's important for athletes to partake in strength conditioning. That's really the goal. It's not about bodybuilding or powerlifting. We're trying to get the car to move efficiently and get where you need to go on. And we're trying to get it to run correctly so you don't break down on the side of the road as well.
Yeah.
That was a simple and great way to put it.
Yeah, and I think for me, just keeping it really practical, like 3 things that I think have a big impact is 1, try to sleep with your phone or devices in a different room. I think that not only helps you go to sleep quicker, 1, you'll stay asleep I think, better just with that in a different room, at least for me. And then in the mornings when you get up, not having your device be right there to just grab and be in your bed for an hour, that has a big impact. It's like not even just like your evening, but also it affects your morning.
Yeah, good studies on that, actually.
Yeah, so that's one. And then another one would be, just like you said, just taking 5-10 minutes to do ankle or whatever exercises. For me, I sometimes do hip exercises as well, and taking time to do that. So really helping your sleep and helping just take care of your body. And then the third one is just to make sure you eat breakfast every day, because I mean, that's something that I know a lot of people just skip breakfast. They grab a cup of coffee, they do whatever. But like that is the most important meal of your day. And
it's called break fast for a reason.
Yeah, because literally you've just been
fast.
fasting for hours, and it will have a big impact on the rest of your day. So, and just for those who want to keep weight, like you got to hit all your meals. If you're skipping meals, you're never going to be able to gain the weight that you want to gain. So those would be my three. But I think this was great. I think I'm excited to see how these continue to evolve, these conversations, and how we can delve into more topics moving forward. For those who want to learn more, we're going to have more information on your training, your recovery, the mental side of things going forward. And if you have any questions, make sure to comment any questions that you have, and we can try to answer those in videos going forward. So I think that's it.
Episode 1?
I guess so. Episode 1.
Welcome to VICI.
Welcome to VICI.